If you have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes and you've been starting your morning with bacon and eggs because someone told you to cut the carbs and eat more fat, I need you to stop and watch this video first. Because half of what you've been told is actually helping you and the other half could be quietly making your insulin resistance worse. Today we're breaking down the full truth about bacon and eggs for diabetics, what the science actually says, what to eat, and how to build a breakfast that generally works for your blood sugar. And if you want a complete guide on how to start reversing insulin resistance with meal plans and recipes already built out for you, just comment the word guide below and I'll send it to you for free. So let's get into it. I'm Diana. I'm a registered dietitian, a certified diabetes care and education specialist, and I have my master's in nutrition science. I've helped thousands of people lower the A1C, improve their insulin sensitivity, and actually reverse the root cause of high blood sugar, not just manage the symptoms. And one of the most common things I see is people swapping out their oatmeal and fruit for bacon and eggs, thinking they're doing the right thing. So let's talk about it honestly and with the science to back it up. Before we even get to bacon and eggs, you need to understand one thing, because without this, nothing else I say will make sense today. And I've talked about this in previous videos, but let me discuss it once again. Type 2 diabetes and prediabetes are not just a carb problem. They are an insulin resistance problem. Here's what that means. Insulin is like a key. Its job is to unlock your cells so glucose, sugar from your food, can get inside and be used for energy. When you have insulin resistance, that lock is rusty. The key doesn't work anymore. So your glucose stays stuck in your bloodstream and your blood sugar stays higher and higher. Now, what makes that lock rusty in the first place? Two big things: excess saturated fat in your diet and excess body fat, especially around the belly and inside the organs. Saturated fat literally interferes with insulin signaling in your muscles and your liver. It makes the lock harder to open. This is why the goal isn't just to avoid carbs. The goal is to restore insulin sensitivity, to fix the lock, so your body can actually manage blood sugar the way it's supposed to. Keep that in mind as we talk about bacon and eggs, because the question isn't just, does this raise my blood sugar right now? The question is, does this help or hurt my insulin sensitivity in the long term? Okay, bacon. I know people love it. I know it feels like a safe food when you're trying to avoid carbs, but I have to be straight with you here. Regular bacon is not a good choice if you have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. And the research on this is not weak. It is strong, consistent, and it comes from some of the largest studies ever done on diet and diabetes. Bacon is a processed red meat. That means it's cured, salted, and treated with nitrates and nitrites. And that combination, the processing, the saturated fat, the sodium, it's a problem for your metabolic health. Here's what the data shows. Large studies following women over time found that eating bacon frequently, 2 or more times per week, was linked to significantly higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. An umbrella review, which is basically a study looking at many studies, found that eating just 2 slices of bacon per day was associated with roughly double the risk of type 2 diabetes. And this was considered high quality evidence. And in people who already have type 2 diabetes, higher processed red meat intake, like bacon, was linked to worse A1C control, higher blood pressure, and more abnormal triglycerides. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Diana, bacon doesn't have carbs. How is it making my blood sugar worse? Great question. And this is exactly where the insulin resistance piece comes in. One of the reasons is that bacon is loaded with saturated fat, and over time, high saturated fat intake has been shown to impair insulin signaling in your muscles and your liver. It doesn't spike your blood sugar in the moment the way a piece of white bread does, but it makes your cells more resistant to insulin over time. It makes that lock rustier. And when your cells are more resistant to insulin, your blood sugar stays higher, even when you're not eating. So yes, bacon is low carb, but low carb does not automatically mean good for diabetes. What matters is whether a food helps or hurts your insulin sensitivity, and unfortunately, bacon hurts it. Even European diabetes dietary guidelines explicitly recommend minimizing red and processed meats and favoring minimally processed plant foods for diabetes management. The bottom line on bacon, it is best treated as an occasional food, not a daily staple. And if you're eating it every morning because you think it's helping your blood sugar, I really do want you to reconsider that. All right, moving on to eggs, because this one is generally more complicated than bacon, and I want to give you the full picture, not a simple yes or no, because the research actually tells an interesting story. So here's the short version. Moderate egg consumption appears to be safe for most people with type 2 diabetes when it's part of an overall healthy diet. But very high intake, more than 1 per day, may increase diabetes risk in some people, depending on what the rest of their diet looks like. So let me break that down. What the clinical trials show, multiple randomized controlled trials, which are the gold standard of nutrition research, tested what happens when people with type 2 diabetes eat up to 2 eggs per day or about 6 to 12 eggs per week. The consistent finding, it didn't worsen blood sugar control or LDL cholesterol compared to a low egg diet. Some trials even found benefits, improvement in HDL cholesterol, so your good cholesterol, and better satiety and improvements in body composition. So from a clinical trial standpoint, moderate egg intake looks fine for people who already have diabetes. Now let's look at what the population studies show. Here's where it gets interesting. When researchers looked at large groups of people over time, hundreds of thousands of people, the picture is a little bit more mixed. Several large US-based studies found that eating 1 or more eggs per day was associated with a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. But, and this is important, studies done in Europe and Asia generally found no association or even a lower risk of diabetes with higher egg intake. So why the difference? Researchers believe it comes down to dietary pattern. In the US, people who eat lots of eggs often eat them alongside bacon, sausage, refined carbs like white bread, and other processed food. It's not just the eggs, it's the whole pattern. In other countries, eggs are more often eaten alongside vegetables, whole grains, minimally processed foods. And this is a really important point. A food doesn't exist in a vacuum. What you eat with it matters just as much as the food itself. So what does this mean for you? If you have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, eggs can be a part of a healthy diet. But the key is what you're eating them with. Eggs with avocado, vegetables, beans, whole grain toast, that's a very different metabolic picture than eggs with bacon, white toast, hash browns, deep fried in oil. The overall dietary pattern is what drives your insulin sensitivity. Eggs are not the villain here, but they're also not a free pass to ignore everything else on your plate. By the way, if you're watching this and thinking, okay, but what does a full day of eating actually look like for reversing insulin resistance? That's exactly what our free guide covers: meal plans, recipes, and a step-by-step breakdown of how to start improving your insulin sensitivity through food. Just comment guide below and I'll get it to you for free. So let's put this all together. What does a blood sugar friendly breakfast actually look like? You want 3 things working together: fiber to slow glucose absorption and feed your gut microbiome, which plays a huge role in insulin sensitivity. Aim for at least 10 to 15 grams of fiber at breakfast alone. Lean protein to help you feel full, stabilize blood sugar, and support muscle mass. And muscle is your body's primary glucose storage unit. The more lean muscle you have, the better your body clears glucose from the bloodstream. And low saturated fat to protect your insulin signaling and keep that cellular lock working properly. Here are a few breakfast ideas that hit all 3. Oatmeal with berries, ground flaxseed, and some protein powder. Oats give you that soluble fiber that directly improves insulin sensitivity. Berries add antioxidants, flaxseed add omega-3s, and more fiber. Sprouted grain toast with mashed chickpeas, half an avocado, and a poached egg. You get fiber from the chickpeas and bread, healthy fat from the avocado, and protein from the egg, all without a heavy saturated fat load. A smoothie with spinach, frozen berries, soy milk, chia seeds, yogurt. Quick, high fiber, high protein, and generally blood sugar friendly. Notice what all of these have in common. They're built around fiber and minimally processed whole foods. That's the foundation. Everything else, including whether you add an egg or not, is secondary to the foundation. Now I want to leave you with this. The low carb, high fat approach has helped a lot of people lower their blood sugar in the short term. And I understand why it's appealing. When you cut carbs, your blood sugar drops. That feels like progress. But here's the nuance. Lowering blood sugar by avoiding carbs is not the same thing as reversing insulin resistance. True reversal means restoring your cell's ability to respond to insulin so your body can handle healthy carbohydrates again without your blood sugar spiking like crazy. That requires reducing saturated fat, increasing fiber, building muscle, and moving your body consistently. Bacon every morning works against that goal. Eggs in moderation as a part of a high fiber, low saturated fat diet can be a part of that goal. And the difference matters, and now you know it. So before we go, just to recap, bacon, processed, high in saturated fat, consistently linked to higher diabetes risk and worse blood sugar control in people who already have diabetes. Treat it as an occasional food, not a daily one. Eggs, they're a bit more nuanced. Moderate intake appears safe based on clinical trials, but what you eat them with matters enormously. Build your plate around fiber and whole foods first, and eggs can absolutely be a part of that. And again, if you want the full roadmap of what to eat, how to structure your meals, and the exact steps to start reversing insulin resistance, comment guide below. It's completely free. Meal plans and recipes are included. And if this video helped you in any way, please give it a thumbs up. It generally helps more people find this information who need it. Thank you, and I'll see you in our next video.